Hey, well, thanks for being here. Welcome to another episode of The Rundown with Ramon. My name is Ramon Ray, publisher of zoneofgenius.com. And today we're going to talk about the power of first impressions. When you, boom, show up and meet someone for the first time and they look at you before you open your mouth, what is the first impression you're giving to them? When you meet somebody for the first time and they at the hello, at the handshake, what's the first impression they're giving you? This is so important. I had the honor of interviewing Paul Bramson, who's an expert in first impressions. And I want to unpack for you the discussion that we had on the power of first impressions, how we can be more relatable to people, how we can help other people and live a best life. This is a powerful, powerful interview. I highly suggest you sit back, listen, take notes, and let me know what you think of this discussion I had with Paul Bramson. We'll give contact information about who he is and et cetera in the interview, but I suspect this will give you something to think about. And he gets a little personal, even dives in to my life a bit. So check this out. Let me get this set up for you. A cool interview with the amazing Paul Bramson. Check this out. Here we go. Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode of The Rundown with Ramon. Today, we're going to talk to Paul Bramson about the power of first impressions. He probably will say it a little different than me, but that's the essence of what we're going to unpack today. Why first impressions matter, why they're so important, why I cleaned up my background even before I talked to Paul. He's the power of first impressions. I wanted to make sure I left the first.
It was positive.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, welcome to The Rundown with Ramon. Paul, tell us a bit who you are today. And if you don't mind, as part of that introduction of you for my audience, just go back, over the last few years, what brought you here. So feel free to take your time and just say hello and unpack who you are today and what brought you here.
So you gave me 8 hours to do this, correct, Ramon?
Go for it, brother.
I'll be concise because I value concise. So today, Paul Bramson, keynote speaking, master trainer, sales, leadership, communication. We get to work with global companies and just really brand name, honorable types of audiences to get them to up-level or elevate their selling, leadership, communication skills. That's what we do today. Started back, I'm going on my 24th anniversary this year, 24 years. I was a boy when I started, Ramon.
I'm sure you're 2 years old, drooling.
Yeah. So it started 24 years ago. It's again, working with all of these global companies through training. What's really where it's evolved to is I'm doing more keynote than I ever have. I'm incredibly passionate about the keynote, the big audiences, getting them all fired up. So that's what we're focused on. And that's what I'm focused on now.
I love it. Paul, just the obvious question, maybe it's not obvious, but obvious to me, before we dive into this aspect of first impressions, why do these bigger brands need you, Paul? I would think that anybody being paid $500,000, $3 million. I don't know what your clients make. They make a lot of money. You can tell them I can carry their bags for them, but why would they need you? You would think the head of Tesla, Coke, Nike, McDonald's, I'm just mentioning big brands we all know. Sure. You would think that their executives, they've been there, done that. Don't they know this already, Paul?
So this is a very astute Ramon. Love this question. Now, if you asked me 10, 15, 20 years ago, the answer is slightly different now with the newer generation coming in because the newer generation loves the development. And if they don't feel like they're getting that, they go to different places where they can get that elevation of their skill set. When you take a look, so for your question, what they're realizing is people get rusty.
Fair enough.
Especially, think about pre-COVID. I can't believe we're talking about COVID again. It seems so long ago, but
it was a big defining moment though, right? So it's okay. It was a defining moment all of our lives. Go ahead.
It was a huge, probably for you and I, for sure, and for many others. People's skills get rusty, and what they're noticing is that they need a refinement, a honing, a polishing. So if they're not getting the results that they need, typically it's a reactive decision, not always proactive. Hey, we need them to be better. We have, by the way, getting people sales conferences, leadership.
I wanted to jump in just a bit on that. Again, welcome to The Rundown with Ramon. My name is Ramon Ray. If you're a regular attendee of The Rundown with Ramon, we have a slightly special episode today with an interview I did about first impressions with Paul Bramson. But I wanted to jump in. He said, sometimes we need a reminder. So I wanted to echo that because sometimes you may think, hey, Ramon, I know how to do first impressions. I know who I'm talking to. I know who I'm speaking to. Well, you think you do, but maybe there's a better way to do it. So again, welcome to The Rundown with Ramon, but I wanted to underline that for those who think, I know how to show up. I bet in this interview, you're going to learn a few things. So keep listening. And again, thanks for listening to The Rundown with Ramon.
conferences. We're pulling them back to face. Let's elevate what they have. So the reason why they're doing is they want them, people recognize the need to be better, especially with the speed of business today.
I love it. So Paul, let's dive right into it. Paul, what are some of the things, you lead the conversation. I'm pretending I'm leading it, but Paul, what are some of the things you say in a keynote, you say to people? I'm sure you've talked about this topic. What do we need to know, Paul? I'll follow you. Set the stage for us.
So the big one is the connecting like a pro. This is the most popular one right now. Certainly doing leadership keynotes, sales keynotes, but the other one is the reading the room is another my
favorite.
Reading the room. I mean, don't even get me started on this, Ramon. Everybody needs this.
Yeah.
The connecting piece has been the most popular in terms of how can we communicate in a way that makes people want to be motivated to be around you versus demotivated. How can we discern or glean how somebody is built so I can pivot to you to better resonate with you? The challenge that people run into, Ramon, is we communicate from our own, I call them underlying needs, our own styles. And unfortunately, that doesn't always resonate with people. So I get in there, by the way, I have them do an assessment before they walk in. So they already know what their underlying need is. So there's a little bit of a buzz going on. And I teach them about the characteristic of an underlying need. And I teach them how to use.
Did you pick that up? We communicate from our own underlying needs. So part of the aspect of showing up and making the proper first impression for ourselves and giving others the chance, the grace for the first impressions we think of them is realizing we have needs. They have needs. How can they match and understanding we're different? Keep listening. This is good.
Words and phrases to get people to open up to want to be around you.
And can you give me a for example on that? I'm sure that depends. The for example can have 20 different for examples, but give me one or two things that are common-ish, like Ramon, for example.
For example, so I'm actually trying to discern your underlying need. And there's 4 of them, by the way. Need to be liked, need to be safe, need to be right, need to look good. Now, you're one of 2 I've already discerned. So I think you either need to be liked or need to look good.
Okay.
By the way, they're all very positive. Not one is not better than the other. I bet you value relationships. I have a side note. And I also think you value your brand. Fair or not fair?
Fair or not fair. And I'll tell you about the need to be liked, Paul. That is a big thing for me. And again, I like how you said there's no judgment, but I'll just, if I may, just deviate and remind me where we were. I get sidetracked very easily.
Please, let's do it.
The thing about need to be liked, I'm the type of person, I guess it's, and again, you're the expert, so help me unpack what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, do it.
I don't mind if you hate me, especially if I know why. Doesn't bother me. Screw you. I can move on. If they get, but like, it bothers me that lady at church who's angry at me, and I heard she's angry because she felt I passed her. That will eat me away all day. I'm the guy to buy chocolate chip cookies, a cupcake, and a brand new car, bring it to her house and make sure that we're okay. Then I feel good. Does that make sense?
Are you upset because of how she thinks about you or how she feels about you?
See, now, Paul, you get deep. Wow.
Well, hey, I'm going to pull the Dr. Phil if I have
about me or how she feels about me.
So you just said to me, you don't care if people hate you.
It's the feeling.
It's a feeling. By the way, if we left this conversation, would you be more... Is it more important to you for people to like you or respect you?
Oh, Paul, see, well, now you're going to have to teach me some of the definitions ask me a few more questions.
So I'll throw this in. When you were growing up in high school, this is, by the way, this is faster. We can go on for hours. I don't have hours, but we're going to go on for hours with this. In high school, was it important for you as you grew? Was it important for you to be popular in certain cliques, certain scenarios, or was it more important for you just to be liked by people?
I suspect to be liked. I suspect. Overall, I have been the popular guy.
I get that.
Have a
That's
high
the personality in you.
Okay, but I'm just trying to confess so you can help me help myself.
Yeah.
But I think it was more like, because I could be quiet in a room too. I am a jokester and all that. But I think it's just to be like, Ramon's a nice guy.
Yeah, you like to hear that.
Yeah.
So if I heard that, I'd be like, wait a minute, nice. I don't care about being nice. but no. I said that respectfully. You just hit it. The fact, so if somebody said, Paul, you're a nice guy, I'm like, I'm insulted.
I got it. I'm
not, you get that.
I know what you mean. 2 different needs. I get it.
It's 2 different underlying needs. So the fact that I know that you are, by the way, there are primary and secondary. Your secondary might be look good. But so the fact that I know that you need to be liked, as an example, I'm going to use words and phrases that resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, by the way, I mean this when I say this. The minute we jumped up, you have an incredibly positive demeanor. You make the energy in the room feel good. By the way,
Thank you.
if somebody says that to you, and I mean that authentically, I hope it
I
came
know you
across
do.
authentically. Does that make you feel good?
It does. It does.
So,
and Paul leads me. And then Paul, I want to. Can you help me recap where we're at to the audience? I want them to know what we're doing here. But Paul, it makes sense because I remember, I'm probably not going to cry right now, but this is how meaningful it is to me, Paul.
Yeah.
I remember my boss at the United Nations.
Yeah.
I could smell his. Before I unpack this story of what happened to me at the United Nations, I want to make sure you're following the gym that's happening. First impressions, yes, we think it's about the clothing and how we show up, how we smell, how we look, and that's part of that. But I hope you see we're going deeper into what first impressions really is and what it's not. I hope you're getting it. By the way, this is the Rundown with Ramon. My name is Ramon Ray. Thanks for being here, especially for some of you who've seen this show multiple times. A special segment of the Rundown with Ramon. We're having a special interview with Paul Bramson talking about the power of first impressions, and I would say a different twist of what it may mean for you and for me. Keep listening. Smoky breath. He put his face next to me. He put his face next to me, his thick French accent. His name was Jacques Fourmoron, older gentleman by now. He had a heart attack and other issues. He put his hand on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And we had some challenges in the office. And eventually my contract wasn't renewed there, not because of him, somebody else. So it was a dysfunctional office. But I remember he put his hand on my shoulder, his thick French accent. Ramon, I appreciate you.
Yeah. We talk about, there you go.
I was done. I'll never forget it.
And you'll never forget him.
Yeah.
How he made you feel by that statement.
Yeah.
So so I want to, and you asked me to recap.
Yeah, to help the audience understand what we did, why it's important, what it means for them.
What Ramon and I are talking about is connecting like a pro, which is understanding someone's underlying need. And there's 4: need to be liked, safe, right, and look good. When you discern somebody's underlying need, lean it, understand it, you start to use words and phrases that they're more likely to be motivated versus be motivated. So Ramon's example about how he felt appreciated as a need to be liked, that's his primary underlying need, that you probably felt that in your gut in a good way. By the way, if he said to you, I'm disappointed in you, I bet you'd lose a lot of sleep over that.
It ripped me apart. It ripped me apart.
And by the way, just let's be clear, nobody loves to hear that, but it affects the underlying needs feel different. I'll give you an example. If I said to you, I'm disappointed in you, Ramon, that's going to, why doesn't Paul like me?
Yeah.
You know what a need to look good feels? Ready? Do you know who I am? That's so disrespectful. That's how I'll look good.
I appreciate. Okay, that's.
By the way, I need to be right. They better be able to back that baby up.
Yeah, I love it.
Facts and details, and a need to be safe is I'm going to need to learn more about this to see if it checks the boxes. So we're talking about professionally. How about your personal life? This transcends into both. Fascinating subject matter. I love it. I could talk about it for hours.
Oh, yeah. And maybe we will. Maybe we'll just have the Rundown with Ramon for 8 hours. Paul Bramson, one more time. Can you give us your website, tell you who you serve, repeat one more time who you are for those who may be just tuning in?
PaulBramson.com, PaulBramson.com. Certainly on LinkedIn, Paul Bramson.
I love it.
That's where to find me.
Get us back on track, Paul. We never were off track. Let's keep the conversation going, Paul. First impressions. What do the Rundown with Ramon audience need to know? This group of small business owners, professionals, maybe they're in sales, maybe they're not, but I know you can take this where you want it. Let's go on to a step 2 or 3. Let's keep going. What else do we need to know?
So I was watching The Equalizer, one of my favorite movies. Do you like? Come on, Denzel. I'm watching Equalizer 1. And there's a scene at the beginning where he walks into the bar and there's the Russian contingency about he needs to have a conversation with them. And in that scene, something is triggered in him where things start to slow down before he does his...
The watch starts ticking and all those things.
Watch starts ticking, everything slows down. He's reading the room, by the way. So when we talk about first impressions, are you the type of person that does that when you walk into a room? But this is also part of reading the room. And are you focused on, okay, here are the people that are in front of me. What do I need
Being able to read the room. Being able to read the room is such an important part of first impressions. If you're just joining us, my name is Ramon Ray, and this is a special edition of The Rundown with Ramon. Reading the room is such an important part of making a great first impression. Keep listening.
To do to make a positive first impression? Am I smiling? Do I have positive energy? Am I coming across authentic? Am I somebody that knows how to have a conversation? Like, I am not loquacious. I'm not verbose. I don't talk incessantly. I'm able to engage. It's just like you and I can tell you're a skilled communicator, but not everyone's a skilled communicator. So if you're able to do those things with an audience, you're making a very strong first impression. Now remember, as a look good, I'm all about my impression. So I'm hyper sensitive to that. But I think you would too.
Yes.
I think you would too.
So reading the room, and Paul, one thing I do well on that, I think I'd hope by God's grace I do it everywhere, but I think I do it well on stage. I mean, that's what you and I do for a living. So as a motivational speaker, event host, which is even different than motivational speaker, I'm in demand in that. And I'd like to think I do it very well, especially from stage. Whether I do it with my wife well or my kids, I don't know. But from stage, being paid, yes. And let me tell you something, Paul, that happened. Again, we're talking to Paul Bramson here. You can find him on LinkedIn. And we're talking about first impressions. Definitely look him up. But may I tell you one thing I did, Paul, and can you reverse engineer that? What happened?
Please.
I was at my big event a few weeks ago. We had hundreds of people at my big event, Entrepreneurs Conference. Gentleman came to talk to me. Now, as I do all the time, Paul, let's say he's looking at me this way. I said, yes, please continue. Sure, I'll take a selfie. Yeah. I'll take a selfie. Paul, you would think I slapped him with cold water. This happened 3 or 4 times because I was being regular Ramon, and most of the people who were dialing around me, I'm fast, got hundreds of people. People didn't expect me to focus just on them. Take a selfie while you're talking. While you're talking, I'm shaking your hand.
That's right.
After the 4th time, Paul, I could see this dude. He was a quieter type of person, not angry, but he could see something was wrong. I had to stop. I put my hands, I don't think I touched him, but I put my hands on his shoulder or something. I said, dude, forgive me. Please tell me how I can help you. He told me it, and he was fine. What happened there, Paul? Not about me reading the room, but just can you unpack that scenario of I read it wrong? I didn't see his need. That makes sense?
I would argue he read it wrong. I would argue he read it wrong. Think about this. You're in a positive, respectful way. You're the center of attention.
Right.
People are looking for, this happens all the times in training and speaking. I'm tired. I don't want to talk to anybody, but yet they want to run up and talk.
Here's one thing I'm getting at. Sometimes we think it's our mistake when something happens, but sometimes it's the other person's mistake and not our mistake at all, or how they read the room. So interesting how Paul's breaking this down. Keep listening. I hope you're enjoying this. A special edition of The Rundown with Ramon.
Talk to you. What I would argue, that person was not reading the room, not you. Now, you might have been able to gently say, hey, listen, I'd love to be able to talk to you, but as you can see, I got a fan club. That's what it was. I said
after my big event, but hundreds of people were there.
I would argue it's not you, it was them.
I understand.
They couldn't read the room. I mean, Ramon, really, you're going to give them that attention when everybody is vying for your attention? So I would say it was nothing that you did. It was what they did. Now, you get to decide how you want to handle it. By the way, bravo for coming back to that, but I think you did them a favor.
Probably the part about though. I could see he didn't like. Is that right, Paul? I could see he didn't like me.
That's why it bothered you.
Yes. When I saw his face,
you know what I would have done? By the way, this is exactly what you did when you saw his face. I would have said, DM me on LinkedIn. I'll get back to you. I would have. Now, you and I have different styles, but it bothered you that it bothered him.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to this is Paul being candid.
Let's go, Paul.
I would have only said something because I didn't want it to affect my brand.
No, I understand. Sure.
That's a.
And we could have ended up on the same wavelength, you and I, but it's just how we handle it's different.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. But you have, so we can get into emotional intelligence here too. You have self-awareness where I would argue that person lacks self-awareness.
Got it.
I would argue.
So, Paul, is this the kind of thing as we're talking about first impressions? And I know you have a body of work that could do more than that, 2 words there, but for the sake of this discussion, we're headlining it that. Is this what we're getting into that you do train, you work with the big and or small brands?
Sure.
They're good people, decent people, maybe went to college, maybe didn't. Their mothers trained them right, assuming, forget the worst of the worst. But you're there to just remind them, hey, executive, you just finished the event. You got a line of 10 people. Slow down, and this is the reminders for them. Is that what you're doing? Is that what we're teaching today?
These are, well, they're reminders, they're nuggets. There's an elevation in skill sets. I mean, we work with, and healthcare providers, biotech, pharma. We're talking about super smart, intellectually. What we're focused a lot on is the emotional intelligence piece, the EQ piece, where you're giving them helpful reminders. But it's more than just helpful reminders. You have to give them wording and perspective to get people to want to change or elevate, if that makes sense.
I thought that was very interesting what Paul said. People have to want to change. People have to want to change. Ask yourself that question. Do you want to change, or do you want to stay the same? Again, if you've just joined, this is a special edition of The Rundown with Ramon. My name is Ramon Ray, host of The Rundown with Ramon. I'm so glad you're here today. Keep listening to the special edition talking about making a first impression. And I hope you're getting so much more from it. Keep listening and check it out. Talk about that more, Paul, that aspect of get them to want to change. And again, everybody, we're talking to Paul Bramson. Definitely, I always look small here at the little thing. It's an M and not an N. That's me. I'm kind of weird like that. Paul Bramson.
Right. I love it. I love it. I can't correct you because you need to be liked. You won't like it. But that actually goes through my mind.
Paul, please. I was asking. What was I saying? I was asking a.
How do you get people to want to change?
Oh, so before you do that, I want to say here goes back to the one to like. Do you know why I have RUH-MOAN? I didn't like people in the middle of the interview. If I'm being interviewed, so Raymond, where can we find you at? I'm just saying my name, Paul. RamonRay.com. The horror.
You will never correct them. Face. You won't correct them though.
I didn't.
No, you're right. I didn't.
I don't. But that's why I put that in there. So it's amazing, Paul, how you're reading how we're different styles. And people said, Ramon, why don't you correct them? No, we'll continue on, Paul.
Well, this is fascinating. That's exactly why you don't.
Yes.
So I went to your LinkedIn. I went to your website. I noticed you purposely. I would have said Raymond, candidly.
Most people do.
Without the Ramon. That's why I asked you in the very beginning.
You did.
But I do it because as a need to look good, I don't like to be corrected as a side note. But more importantly, I want my brand to be spot on. So I want to make you feel like, oh, Paul gets it. Paul did some research. But I know why you do it. I have somebody works very closely with me in my company. She spells her name out exactly. So people pronounce it exactly the same way.
And if they make a mistake, it's okay. We just sit in silence. But Paul, remind me again what I asked you. Why do people why do they want to change? What causes them to want to change? Talk about that, Paul.
This gets interesting. So this is two different scenarios. In training, the way that you get people to understand there's room for growth or elevation is you need to role play scenarios or do simulations in a finessed way so nobody feels uncomfortable to say, wow, I thought I knew that. As I just went through that or watched Paul and company do that, I don't do it like that. By the way, in trainings, if you don't do that, some people are like, oh, I already do that. No, you don't. You have to show that there's room for growth. In the keynotes, that's why I haven't do the underlying needs assessment. That's why I will do, what makes the keynote special is I will engage the audience very quickly. Not to make them feel uncomfortable, but I also find out I'll do role play scenarios and or play out to show, hey, if you feel like this is what could be happening, what should be happening, gets their minds to open. It's a great question. But not everybody. I will say the younger generation, this Gen Z, they love it. They love this. It's more for the millennials and Gen Xers and boomers that are out there now that have been doing it a while, that have been successful in their own way. You have to really get into their mindset to show them there's room for growth. So the younger generation, they're already there.
Yeah.
It's doing those scenarios, those simulations, and talking them through it. And like you do with your energy level, which is phenomenal. Actually, before I got on this call, I actually said to myself, this is the energy level I'm going to love. By the way, and I appreciate that. Not everybody has that. You have to bring that, as you know, as a speaker, you bring that energy, that passion, that enthusiasm, that conviction that gets people to open up.
I love it. Listen, everybody, we're talking to Paul Bramson. A lot he can unpack today, but the headline, but you should check his work out, his first impressions. Paul, one other question that came to me, Paul, and I think we're going to do is stop right there. How was this for you today? Did this help you unpack the power of creating an amazing first impression? Something we all need help with. How we show up in the world and how we see other people is so important. This is a special edition of The Rundown with Ramon. My name is Ramon Ray. Let me know if you're listening to this special episode about first impressions and how you liked it. Little deviation from what I normally do for those of you who are used to The Rundown with Ramon, but those of you your first time, so much more in store for you on the next edition of The Rundown with Ramon. Thanks for being here today. And listen, here's one thing I want you to do. Go tell somebody you appreciate them. Go tell somebody you're grateful for them. You like to hear it, and people need to know that they matter. And maybe you're that person in their life to let them know that they matter and they can make a difference. Thanks so much for listening to The Rundown with Ramon. I'll see you next time.